Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your source material, sometimes the really profound, sometimes frankly pretty strange stuff, and try to make it deeply knowable.
Hmm.
Today we're really wrestling with some big concepts, bridging physics and consciousness. It's all drawn from Itzhak Bentov's book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. Highly influential and surprisingly readable, too.
Yeah, really is. Bentov, he wasn't your typical scientist, more like an intuitive inventor.
Right.
And he was asking these huge questions like, if the universe runs on physical laws, can those same laws, if you push them, explain things like, well, clairvoyance or out-of-body experiences, even a universal mind?
So our mission here is to pull out his key ideas. He's proposing this sort of unified model of reality,
Exactly.
where the subtle stuff, the non-physical, and the solid material world are basically, well, the same thing, just vibrating differently.
That's the core of it. It's a really mind-bending premise, honestly. You kind of have to temporarily suspend your everyday ideas about space, time, matter, just for a bit.
Okay.
Because Bentov suggests our whole reality, everything from, quantum jitters up to galaxies, it's all a vibratory illusion, an information pattern.
And understanding wave patterns is the key.
That's his shortcut, yeah, to understand consciousness and, well, everything else.
All right, let's dive in. Starting right at the foundation. What is reality actually made of?
Well, Bentov imagines this theoretical supermicroscope, right?
Okay.
And if you could look at solid matter through it, that feeling of solidity just dissolves.
And what's left? What do you see instead?
Mostly void, empty space. You zoom past molecules, atoms, the nucleus. It's almost entirely emptiness.
But not just passive emptiness.
No, exactly. That space is filled with oscillating fields, periodic changes. That's what he calls micro-reality.
Okay, that's a huge conceptual jump, though. From empty space to saying sound or periodic change is the basis of reality. Is that literal sound?
It's broader than just audible sound waves. Think of it as any repetitive change, any oscillation. So yeah, airwaves count, but so do electromagnetic fields, gravity waves, anything moving periodically, even at light speed. For Bentov, every physical thing is just a form of this sound.
And the implication there is total connection. If everything's a vibration.
It all influences everything else, instantly in a way.
How does he illustrate that?
He uses a simple electric circuit example. You close the switch, that action creates magnetic fields, gravitational waves.
Tiny ones, presumably.
Oh, incredibly tiny, yeah. But theoretically, they ripple outwards to the very edge of the universe. Every little action affects the whole system. It's all linked.
Which then brings up the question of information. How is all this stuff stored? That's where the hologram idea comes in.
Exactly. Think about dropping pebbles in a still pond.
Okay, ripples spreading out.
Right. And where those ripples cross and interfere, you get this really complex, almost chaotic-looking pattern on the surface. But that pattern isn't just chaos. It actually encodes information about where and when each pebble hit the water.
So the complexity stores the data.
Yes. And the amazing thing about a hologram is, if you could somehow freeze that water surface,
Yeah.
right, and break off just a small piece,
Yeah.
that tiny fragment would still contain enough information to reconstruct the pattern of all the original pebbles. The whole is in every part. That's the holographic principle.
Okay. And to make sense of these waves, we need tools. Bentov points to two wave properties. Interference
Constructive and destructive, yeah.
Yeah.
Waves adding up or canceling out.
and beat frequencies. What's the deal with the cosmic mixer, as he calls it?
Beat frequencies are fascinating. It's basically nature's way of taking really, really high frequencies and stepping them down to lower, more manageable ones.
How does that work?
If you have two high frequencies interfering, say 60 hertz and 50 hertz,
Okay.
their difference creates a third frequency, a much slower one, in this case 10 hertz. It's like a subtraction mechanism that turns these super fast, subtle vibrations into something perceivable.
Gotcha. So connecting that back up, the whole universe is like a giant interference pattern, storing all information.
That's the idea, a vast hologram, the universal mind.
And matter, physical stuff.
Matter is just the vibrating part, the changing aspect of what he calls pure consciousness. He splits creation in two. There's the absolute pure consciousness, the void, eternal, unchanging.
Okay.
And then there's the relative, that's the ripples on the sea of consciousness. That's matter, energy, everything we perceive. It's just consciousness vibrating, relatively slowly.
Right. So how do we, these sort of slow biological machines, interact with this incredibly fast vibrating reality? Our nervous system seems way too slow.
It is, comparatively. What it does is translate that complex objective reality into a much simpler code, like a Morse code, he says.
Action and rest signals.
Basically, yeah. Electrical spikes. On or off. It's a very reduced translation of what's really out there.
And this translation process leads to maybe the wildest part, the pendulum analogy, explaining the observer.
Yes, this is core Bentov. Think about any simple oscillating system, a pendulum swinging back and forth.
Like a swing in a park or a clock pendulum.
Okay. It moves between 2 points where it momentarily stops before swinging back, right?
Yeah, the top of the arc.
At that precise instant of reversal, classical physics says its velocity is 0. It stops.
Makes sense.
But here's Bentov's big controversial move. He applies quantum mechanics, specifically Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, to this macroscopic object.
Wait, hold on. Quantum rules for a pendulum. Or like a heart beating. That feels like mixing scales where it doesn't apply. How does he justify that?
He definitely acknowledges it's a leap. But his argument is that at that exact point of 0 velocity, the momentum, mass times velocity, is precisely 0.
Okay.
And if momentum is perfectly known, it's 0. Heisenberg's principle demands that its position must become completely uncertain, indefinite.
So for that tiny fraction of a second, the pendulum isn't anywhere specific. Its location smears out.
That's the implication if you follow the logic strictly. If its position is undefinable, it must, in a sense, be everywhere at once.
So, if the physical object's location is uncertain, what happens to the observer? Our consciousness, our psyche, where does it go?
This is the crux. Bentov suggests the non-physical part of us, the observer, has to momentarily leave objective spacetime. It expands outwards at, well, practically infinite velocity.
It becomes omnipresent. For instance.
Briefly, yes, because its physical anchor point, its defined location, has momentarily dissolved. It has to vanish from normal spacetime.
So our fundamental existence relies on constantly blinking out of reality.
That's what the model suggests, yeah.
Okay.
Think about our bodies. The heart pumps, the aorta pulses. That's a major oscillation, about 7 times a second.
Okay.
So if there are 2 points of rest per cycle, that means the non-physical eases blinks off and on, roughly 14 times every second.
14 times a second, we disappear and become omnipresent. That's hard to grasp.
It really is. But we don't remember it, right? Because the objective time spent out there is almost 0. Too short for our normal awareness to register.
So what's the common thread, then, between objective reality and our subjective experience?
It seems to be change. Motion. Oscillation between states of rest. Without that movement, that constant back and forth, you just have perpetual rest. And as Bentov says, no perceptible reality.
Okay, so he needed a way to kind of catch this observer in the act, right? Which leads to that experiment about subjective time.
The time distortion test, yeah. It's actually quite simple to try.
How does it work?
You just sit quietly, relax deeply, and then you vividly visualize yourself doing something you absolutely love, like really love.
Yeah.
Maybe sitting on a perfect beach, feeling the sun, hearing the waves.
Total immersion. Okay.
And while you're deep in that visualization, you glance back at the second hand of a real physical clock. An analog one works best.
And what happens?
If you really achieve that deep state of visualization, when your focus snaps back to the clock, the second hand might appear to slow right down, or even seem to stop completely for a moment.
Oh, seeing time stop.
It's reported as quite a jolt. That's the moment your observer, which had effectively gone to the beach in subjective time, snaps back to the physical here and now.
So Bentov's explanation is, my consciousness literally went somewhere else, left the brain.
In subjective time, yes. It left the hardware unattended for a moment. But this observation let him actually try to quantify consciousness.
How? Put a number on it.
Sort of. He proposed this as direct evidence that our subjective experience of space and time can rotate relative to objective space-time.
Rotate, like on a graph.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine the normal axis, space across, time up, at 90 degrees. In these altered states, like meditation or that visualization, your subjective space and time axes rotate. They move closer together, effectively rotating away from the objective time axis.
Okay, I think I'm visualizing it.
And this rotation leads to the level of consciousness index. It's simply subjective time divided by objective time.
So if the subjective axes rotate a lot,
If that subjective time axis rotates close to 90 degrees away from the objective one, the amount of objective time passing becomes incredibly small relative to the subjective experience.
meaning subjective time stretches out.
Infinitely long, potentially. That's how you can have these incredibly detailed dreams or experiences that seem to last forever, but only take seconds of clock time. That rotation makes subjective time huge compared to objective time.
And that rotation mathematically is what lets the observer break the light barrier.
That's the mechanism he proposes, yes. It allows the non-physical psyche to operate in what he calls a space-like dimension.
Space-like travel. Help me with that. What does that mean?
It's kind of the inverse of our normal experience. We move through space easily while time marches forward steadily for us.
Right.
In this space-like dimension, the observer is essentially moving through objective time past or future rather than just through space.
Okay, wow. So that's the potential mechanism for seeing the future or instant knowing.
That's what he suggests, yeah. Clairvoyance, maybe even omniscience in a way. By traveling subjectively, you connect instantly to that universal hologram, that information field we talked about. You're observing matter's path through objective time.
Okay, let's ground this again. Bring it back to the body, to health. How does our physical self tie into these universal frequencies? You mentioned the Earth's field.
Right, the Schumann resonance. The Earth has its own natural electrostatic field, which resonates at about 7.5 hertz, roughly.
And our body being an oscillator.
Is coupled to it. We're tuned in, essentially. And this connection becomes much stronger in states of deep stillness, like meditation, or even just holding the breath correctly.
How does that amplify things?
When breathing slows or stops momentarily in certain practices, the heart aorta system, that main oscillator, can become really finely tuned, like a perfectly resonant musical instrument.
Okay.
And when that happens, the body's micromotion, the tiny, subtle movements of tissues and fluids, actually increases in amplitude. It gets about 3 times stronger. It's a state of high energy efficiency.
And this resonance isn't just internal.
No, because it's coupled to the Earth's field. Bentov suggested that a group of people meditating together, all generating this coherent, simple harmonic motion around 7 hertz,
Yeah.
can actually entrain others. Their coherent signal propagates through the planetary field and can subtly encourage other nervous systems anywhere on Earth to move towards that same resonant state, towards stillness.
Wow. That resonant state, though, can trigger some physical stuff, can't it? He talks about the Physio-Kundalini Syndrome.
Yes. This is basically the nervous system upgrading itself or maybe detoxing to handle these higher states of coherence. It's a process where deep-seated chronic emotional stresses that are literally held in the body get released.
And there are specific symptoms.
A pattern, often, yes. He describes a classic sequence. It might start with a tingling or cramping feeling,
Correct.
often in the left foot or toes.
Left foot? Why left?
It seems to relate to how sensory information crosses over in the brain. The sensation then typically travels up the left leg and then moves along the path of the sensory motor cortex in the brain. That map of the body on the brain surfaces the homunculus.
Like a little man map in the
Yeah.
brain, so the feeling traces that map.
Exactly. It might move up the leg area and then torso, arm, face areas on that map. The intensity of these sensations is usually proportional to the amount of stress being released. It can be uncomfortable, but Bentov saw it as a clearing process.
So it's not necessarily pleasant, but it's productive.
That's the idea. Once that neurological circuit has been traced and cleared, the body is supposedly free from those really deep, old stresses.
And the nervous system is then, what, upgraded?
He described it as achieving a kind of young adult status, cleaned up, more efficient, and better prepared to handle the subtle energy flows and potentially higher levels of consciousness we've been discussing.
So bringing it all together then, Bentov's ultimate picture is mind and matter aren't separate.
Not fundamentally, no. They're the same basic stuff, just vibrating at different rates. Coarse vibrations are matter. Finer vibrations are mind or consciousness.
Yeah.
We aren't just physical bodies stuck in 3D space.
We're 4-dimensional holograms made of fields.
Pulsating fields interacting with this universal void or pure consciousness. That's his vision.
He had that great analogy near the end, didn't he? About the seed.
Oh yeah, the seed containing the blueprint for the entire tree.
Right. All the space and time the tree will ever occupy is somehow condensed, stored within that tiny seed, just waiting to unfold.
It's a powerful image for how the universe might be structured. And he even speculates, maybe our whole universe is just one tiny cell, one seed within a much, much larger system.
Which leads to a pretty profound closing thought for you listening out there. If that seed analogy holds true for us too, how much of your own full-grown tree, all that potential, that 4-dimensional reality packed inside you, how much of it have you actually allowed yourself to see? How much have you let unfold through finding that stillness?
Something to ponder.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing this incredible source material for this deep dive. It's been fascinating. We'll see you next time.